The anime begins with a young man playing many online games. While playing one of the games, he suddenly teleported into the game world, where the character Ado, whom he used to play as, appeared before him, surprising him. Otto assured him that it was her, and he discovered that the game he had been playing while bedridden was a nation management simulation game set in the dark world of Fantaria. Otto was his favorite character in the game, and she started talking about the king, making him wonder, was he playing the role of the king? He thought she meant the leader of Mayogura, but Otto clarified that it was King Takuto, who had achieved many accomplishments in the nightmare difficulty stage. This was using the civilization said to be the most difficult to control, the Ruin civilization. He was also the top-ranked player in the user rankings. This led to Takuto's surprise as to how she knew this. But Atto remembered everything he had asked of her during the game, and that they had conquered the world several times and lost repeatedly, so there was no need to worry. Takuto explained to her that he used her playstyle in the game because he wanted to become as strong as her, and he was happy now that he was talking to her. Atto felt the same wonderful feeling. Then Takuto looked at the sky and wondered about its shape. He asked Atto if she had summoned him to this place, but she hadn't. She quickly deduced that he wasn't in the sky, but it seemed that this was the world of eternal nations, a place unfamiliar to Takuto. Atto wondered if this was called a miracle, and approached him, expressing her love for the time she met him. She asked him if they could start over again, but he didn't know where they were, so Atto thought it might be her world, or a completely different world. Then, she suggested that, as they had done before, they should start together anew to build a kingdom for themselves. Takuto was in complete shock. He didn't know what was happening to him, but he agreed to Ato's suggestion that they would start as they had before. He asked her to build their civilization, their kingdom together, which made Atto feel happy. Then she introduced herself, saying that she was Ato the Protector, the child born from the Protector who would destroy the world. She affirmed that from that moment on, her mind was under the command of King Takuto. She asked him to descend to the lowest ranks, and Takuto felt excited and told her that their civilization was the most evil of all nations. Takuto asked her, "So, you know what Mayagura should do first, right?" Then they decided that they would seclude themselves from the world and close their doors to themselves. Afterward, Takuto summoned an exploration animal, but they both felt disgusted by the animal's appearance. Takuto sensed that their civilization, Mayagura, was ancient and controlled evil and ruin, and they should always remember that before taking any wrong step. Atto saw that they should be careful about being discovered by others, which was one of the strict rules of the game in the early stages. Then Takuto asked the exploration insect to go out and discover everything near them, and Atto warned it that if it disappointed King Takuto, it should make sure to complete its mission. The insect took off quickly, but Ato felt worried, because the insect resembled one performing its function, as one subservient to orders. Takuto discovered that it was possible to share the insect's field of vision, just as he used to play, but this was costly, as it would require 100 magic points, and they only had 100 points left. Building a settlement to serve as their initial base would require 20 magic points. Atto thought the cost was high, and they shouldn't waste so much energy. Then Takuto suggested creating a warrior to fight for them, but that wasn't an option due to the limited magic points. Atto told him gratefully that she would fight seriously if she had to. Takuto discovered that Atto would grow stronger over time, but her current level was 3, which meant that Minagura's situation was now very risky, and any confrontation she faced could lead to its annihilation. Atto asked him to smile a little, then the insect continued to explore, and Takuto continued to follow it. Through this, he was able to become familiar with the terrain of the surrounding area, and saw that it was covered with forests, but they hadn't encountered any monsters yet. Atto expected the forest to be a good place to hide monsters, but it was strange that none had appeared. While Takuto didn't see anything he thought was a food source, he decided to continue exploring for a while. Ato saw that she couldn't provide much help in this, and apologized to him for that, but this wasn't important to Takuto, as he expressed his happiness that she was by his side. Ato was amazed by his words and approached him, and was touched by his wonderful words. Suddenly, a group of dark elves appeared to them, and they weren't far from their location. It was a large group, and Ato thought they were in a fantasy world, and dark elves are usually neutral, but they tend towards evil neutrality. Therefore, it was reassuring to them. Takuto asked Ato if she thought this was the world of eternal nations, because if they found another civilization's settlement, it would be bad. He appreciated the consequences of war, and expressed his desire to avoid it as much as possible. He saw that they needed to hide at first, and Ato saw that being near another civilization would be very annoying. Ato suggested that if this was the case, they should run away. Takuto agreed to that, because Mayogura loves peace and harmony above all else, and Ato thought that war was a barbaric act in any case. Then Takuto decided that they would observe these dark elves to gather information about the surrounding area. If they were unlucky, they would run away, and Ato agreed with him. Then a number of dark elves appeared to them, which surprised everyone. The scene was followed by a memory of these elves wandering in the forest, and their leader was called Gia. They had nowhere to go after being driven out of their lands, and their children were unable to survive. Gia believed that this forest was full of plants, and there must be food, but Emily knew of a cursed forest near them, on the edge of the unknown lands of Idroja. She remembered sealing something in this land and believed that there was no thriving life there. Gia thought these were myths because the trees grew well, and asked her not to give up. He told himself that he shouldn't give up either because his people were waiting for him, and he couldn't leave until he met Ato and Takuto. He returned to their present, and saw Takuto as a massive great evil, which led to his extreme fear for his people and soldiers as well. He couldn't make any wrong decisions. Gia approached and knelt before Takto, introducing himself as the chief warrior of the Mazarim clan of the Dark Thousand. Gia apologized to Takto for entering the king's forest without permission. Ato thought it was good that Gia apologized since he had trespassed on their land. She asked him why he did that. Gia told her that his clan once lived in the central lands of Idaraja. As he spoke, he felt relieved that they understood his situation, but she got angry and demanded that he get to the point immediately. Gia explained that they had been driven from their land and had nowhere else to go. He told himself it was wrong to try to sugarcoat the truth. Then, Takto asked Gia if their bodies were weak, and Gia was shocked by the question but replied that the persecution had been very severe. He said they had come to this land fleeing injustice because their food supplies had run out on the way, and they were also trying to escape their pursuers. They hadn't been able to get more food and hadn't eaten for a long time. Gaia felt they didn't deserve all this suffering, and that their affliction wasn't their right. All they wanted was to live in peace in a place of their own. Takto then offered them apples, which surprised Gia. Takto told them that the apples belonged to them and asked if he knew the taste, to which Gia replied that he had never seen them before and that he was unfamiliar with the fruit. He thought it was rude to eat in front of him without sharing anything, but the rest of Gia's soldiers immediately ate the apples and enjoyed them greatly. Takto showed them differently colored apples, and Ato thought that Gia should thank Takto for being generous with them. Gaia pleaded with Takto and informed him about the children and the elderly who were starving and had not eaten anything either. He said they could become skin and bones, and he wanted to take some apples for the rest of his people, preferring to share instead of eating alone. This made Takto empathize with him, and he offered him a lot of different food, leaving Gia astonished. Gia told himself that they, the Dark Thousand, fled from the light, which was why they were called the Dark Thousand, living off the Light Thousand while being forced to live in the dark away from the light. No one had ever extended a helping hand to them, but Takto provided them with food and told them it was theirs now. The soldiers of the Dark Thousand thanked Takto, and Gia asked for the name of the king, but he did not answer him. Then we moved to where the rest of the Dark Thousand were, where there was a very sick woman. Her daughter told her that Gia, their chief, was coming with food now. She was very sad for her mother when they smelled food nearby, which caught their attention. Then Gia appeared and told them he had brought a lot of food and asked them to prepare it. The young and old were fed, and they became very happy. One of the Dark Thousand asked Gia where he got the food from. He told her that he found it somewhere, reminding Takto of that moment, and then the Dark Thousand went to sleep while Gia stayed awake alone. Then elderly Moltar came to him and told him that the food he brought was amazing, and he had never seen anything like it in his life. Gia shared the same opinion as he had tasted the food. Moltar asked Gia what had happened. Gia told him that he had encountered legendary beings deep in the forest. Moltar asked what kind of legends. Gia wondered if Emily had mentioned to him about a being sealed in cursed lands. Moltar inquired if he had met the King of Ruin. Gaia told him some legends and old books, saying that when the world reaches its saturation point, the King of Ruin appears, bringing chaos to everything and forcing people to start life anew. However, he didn't know how true these stories were, but he realized they couldn't be lies. Gaia asked Moltar if he was describing himself with that, but Takto didn't introduce himself to anyone, yet he was terrifying enough to earn the title King of Ruin. Moltar asked if he spoke with that king, but Gaia told him it was beyond their understanding, though there was a young woman serving him. He explained some of the king's words, but Moltar didn't believe that this was the King of Ruin, though he was also certainly not a being of good. After filling his stomach and regaining some of his magical energy, he realized that this forest was unnatural, and he should pay attention to that. Moltar asked Gia if he had offered anything in return for the food to the king. When Moltar learned that Gia had not given anything, he felt uneasy. Moltar criticized Gia, saying it wasn't normal for an evil being to grant gifts without return, but all Gia did was explain what they had gone through when he was asked. Moltar wondered why someone like the King of Ruin would do this, and Gia speculated that it was out of mercy and that he sympathized with their plight. The king overwhelmed them with his generosity, which enraged Moltar because he bowed to him and became his subordinate. But Gia denied it, and Moltar asked him why he knelt to him. Gia told him that this gesture indicates respect, but he felt the king had helped them and offered them assistance when they were starving. Moltar expressed his doubts, considering this a wicked being, but Gia had no other choice, and they thought they could argue now because their bellies were full, and the king provided them with food that satisfied their hunger. Gia then felt disappointed and asked him what he should have done, but Moltar couldn't find an answer for him and apologized for that, affirming he had done everything he could. Moltar, as the leader of the Dark Thousand, would now negotiate with the king, having lived for over 2 centuries. It was natural for him to find a solution to this, and he was waiting for the day he could live in peace. So, he asked Gia when that day would come. We then moved to Takto, where Ato asked him to sit up straight. She asked him how he could spend rare magical energy on something like that, but Takto felt pity for them, which made Ato angry, as they had already started establishing Mainagora, and were still ignorant of what surrounded them. He apologized to Ato for using magical energy without her knowledge, promising that next time he would ask her before doing this, and requested that she not be angry, but she denied being angry. Then Takto told told Ado that he needed her. He apologized for opposing her in the wise decision she made. He asked her to issue the orders as she wished. However, Ado told him that he couldn't talk smoothly with the Dark Thousand. While he spoke to her very easily, words failed to come out when he stood before others. Ado thought he was playing the role of a strict leader who despised grand speeches and left detailed negotiations for his followers. Takto realized he was poor at communication and cried, which saddened Ado a lot, prompting her to ask him to stop crying. Moltaire saw that expressing Takto's food to the elves would bring destruction and force everyone to start over. He asked Gya if he was ready to meet this king again, and Moltaire had no idea what would be asked of them in return for the charity they had been given. However, Gya was confident that he had not spoken about this matter, but Moltaire asked Gya if he was sure about something like this. He mentioned that asking an evil being for compensation was a given, but it was also true that they needed to borrow the king's power to survive. Gya thought that even if they left this forest, they would return to a life of homelessness and struggle to find food, leading to their end. However, Moltaire believed they had come here to live in a world without persecution. This might be their last chance, and he urged that they go to Takto because the future of their people depended on them. They were being watched by the insect linked to Takto, and then we moved to Takto's headquarters. The insect approached them to deliver the news, but found Ado talking with Takto for some time. It was Takto who requested the insect to relay the information. After the insect informed Takto about something, he understood that the elves were on their way to him. Ado thought they were coming because of the food he had offered them yesterday, and that he shouldn't give it all at once. But Takto expected that the presence of people with different ideas and cultures could lead to conflicts. He wanted to take the remaining food from them and leave immediately. Ado asked Takto if he was worried about anything. He was concerned that he did not want to negotiate or communicate well, which made him unable to negotiate properly. Ado then offered to handle the negotiations instead of him, which would show Takto as a beloved king to all of them. Takto appreciated her for this and asked her if she was sure about it. Ado pledged her loyalty and offered to be at his service if he needed anything. She thought he saw her as unqualified for this role, but that was not a concern for Takto, who relied heavily on her, which made Ado happy to hear this. Then Moltaire and Gya approached Takto, starting to thank him for the food. Moltaire introduced himself to Takto, and Ado saw that Moltaire showed his respect as he should. She asked him what he wanted to say, and then Moltaire asked about Takto's name to get to know him better. This caused Ado some discomfort, but Takto agreed and told them that he was the ruler of the world, the Lord of Destruction, Ira Takto. Ado warned him to always refer to him as King Takto, which greatly surprised Moltaire. Then Ado introduced herself as being of a lesser status than King Takto, but emphasized that they should be careful to show her respect while talking. Then Moltaire promised them he would engrave their names into the spirits of their people. Takto felt relieved that things were going smoothly, and Ado allowed them to take the food and go since most of it wouldn't last long anyway, which surprised Gya and Moltaire. But Moltaire asked how he could repay King Takto. Ado thought this wasn't necessary and doubted they could do anything that would please the king since they lacked the necessary resources. Moltaire almost spoke, but Ado didn't give him the chance, sensing a hesitant stance, and asked if they were planning to do something, but Moltaire denied it outright. Then Takto sensed that things were heading in a strange direction and asked Ado to talk about the negotiations, whispering to her everything he wanted. This angered Ado because they were terrible negotiators. She felt she shouldn't leave them like this and wipe them out to avoid future encounters. However, Takto was confident they wanted to build a mutually beneficial relationship, which surprised Ado. Takto suggested they accept a price that would be acceptable to them, rather than offering help without for compensation, as it would make them feel more reassured. Ado then told the elves that Takto was determined to accept their offer in exchange for the kindness he had shown them previously. Moltaire expressed their gratitude, and Takto sensed that Moltaire was worried about a trick because they sided with evil. Ado understood that the elves saw the king as a dark monster, but the elves denied this. Ado then began to think about what they could offer in return, and approached Takto because she didn't know what to do. She requested to tell them they would introduce them to the outside world of the forest. Moltaire agreed, and would show them everything he had seen and heard. Ado then asked them to leave the forest and respect their oath, which made Gya shiver upon hearing this. Takto expected Gya's actions to be much more reasonable than Moltaire's, but Moltaire assured them that what would make them happiest was staying in the forest with the king. But Ado told them that this was forbidden. If they wanted to save the souls of their remaining clan, they should not mention what had just happened to anyone else, which angered Gya. However, Moltaire asked him to calm down and follow the king's instructions. Then Moltaire thanked Takto for allowing them to visit him, and they left, wondering if it was the right thing to do, or if he had rejected them like this. He saw that there was a great chance for their annihilation elsewhere, and that a move was necessary to change the situation. Then he asked them to wait, and asked why they wouldn't become his followers, which surprised them. Ado was shocked and insisted she needed to consult with the king a little, then approached him angrily and asked him what he was trying to do. Takto explained that he considered considered using a refugee system, that the elves were neither good nor evil by nature, and if he accepted them as refugees, assuming things would work out as in the game, they should be evil beings like them. But Atto thought it was possible for groups of similarly evil beings to coexist. Even though they were very different from the main citizens of Mainogura, the humanoids, there remained a risk of clashes between them. Tacto anticipated the existence of dangers, but she had to remember how the humanoids looked. He asked her if she could bear living with them as citizens. Atto was sure it would be difficult to have a normal conversation with those humanoids because their appearance was unpleasant. Thus, Tacto assumed they would be compatible, and she would help him a lot if the information reached them. Then Atto told them that Tacto intended to establish a nation here soon, and asked if they wanted to be its citizens, promising to provide them protection. Moltaire asked what would happen to them if they became his followers. Atto promised them eternal happiness, and informed them that they would become evil beings and would have freedom in choosing their destiny. She told them things would be much more enjoyable beside him if they wanted to see it her way. Then they moved on to explore the forest, and Atto asked Tacto to watch his steps, but Tacto was fine and told Atto that it would take some time for the elves to make their decision to follow him. Anyone else would think deeply about it, transforming it into a human, but Atto told them they had known from the beginning what would be the best choice for them. She told him that their camp was over there, she could see it. As they approached the location of the elves, Moltar asked them to kneel before him, and when one of the elves looked at him, he lost his composure and requested that no one look directly at him until Tacto sat on the throne. Atto informed Tacto that all the elves were present and announced their acceptance as citizens of their new nation, Mainogura. Atto asked Tacto if he was sure about this. Tacto replied that all the conditions had been met and asked her to announce formally the establishment of Mainogura. Then Atto told them they were now citizens of Mainogura and that their happiness and safety will be guaranteed under King Tacto. But Gia wondered if that was everything. They had been told they would become villains, but he felt no change at all. He then felt hatred rising within him for those who burned and oppressed them, subjected them to harm. Emily felt this too, but Gia's anger increased as Tacto approached him and asked how he was doing. Gia then thought it was a joy to be under someone's care. The elves greeted Tacto while weeping with happiness, and then Tacto realized he was stuck because he would start at a disadvantage in the continent. He was very upset and showed the map to Atto, seething with anger. He told her about the two great nations in the village, one of which was the kingdom of Qualia. Atto informed him that this people was loyal to Arlos, which meant they were strong supporters of goodness. The kingdom of Na, on the other hand, is elves who love nature, which is also good. Tacto believed that if they discovered their evil nation, it would lead to their demise. On Tacto's side, he knew they didn't have the military power right now to oppose these two great nations. Both were greatly disturbed, but Tacto thought not all news was bad. Usually, Mainogura struggled to produce research, and Atto told him that their citizens, who were half humans, were ultimately foolish. But the good thing was that their fertility was high, and their happiness didn't decrease easily. Tacto speculated that the elves might cover this weakness. After Atto understood, she heard the sound of the elves coming to report to them about the outside world. Gia then told Tacto that he brought with him Emily, his assistant, because she was a smart woman with extensive knowledge of legends and other nations. He believed she would be of benefit to them. Atto then told them that the king was pleased with their dedication, and that they would be assigned to prominent positions to manage the kingdom of Mainogura. This was a decision by Tacto without any turning back. Moltar would take care of state administration, and since he could use magic, great hopes would be placed on him. Moltar accepted immediately, and Gia would continue working as the leader of the warriors, taking charge of the forces of Mainogura. It would be his responsibility to recruit soldiers, and Gia gladly accepted the position, declaring they were ready to kill the enemies and turn them into lifeless bodies, which frightened Tacto because war is brutal. Atto reminded them that the king preferred peace and asked him to always remember this. She then wondered why the king of Ruin was so peaceful. Atto asked them to rest well to recover because they would be tasked with building housing. Moltar expressed his gratitude, but he benefited more from Gia, who only cared about his own strength. This annoyed Gia, who told the king that he was more vigorous than Moltar and didn't need to rest at all. Emily would also work hard, but Atto thought they were obsessed with work and asked Tacto if they could request resource gathering at that time. But Tacto anticipated the idea of improving the terrain and told him that they also had the capability. She then asked Moltar if they could collect wood while ensuring enough of the forest remained unharmed. Moltar hesitated for this task because they were a people living under the forest, and if he intended to construct buildings using the massive trees, he was sure to meet the king's desire. Atto was very hopeful about this, which astonished Gia once again, as the king of Ruin didn't seem intent on destroying the forest. Tacto then wished them good luck and asked them not to forget to reforest the woods, which surprised the elves. Gia asked what was meant by reforesting it. Atto was shocked he didn't understand the meaning of reforesting. She asked Moltar and Emily, but they didn't know either. Then Tacto discovered that the peoples of this world did not know how to build fortresses using magical technology. Atto then asked Moltar if he was aware of the terms of magic and the 6 main elements. Moltar only knew about the 4 main elements, which was a basic concept of magic. Emily had never heard the term military magic used by any other nation. Here, Takto realized they were very far behind in magical technology. Moltar saw they were much poorer than he thought his kingdom was, but Otto believed they had the opportunity to surpass other nations as soon as they advanced. She then told them that reforestation was the practice of planting trees after cutting them to preserve the environment, and it was an essential step to ensure resources. However, Emily didn't think any method of their magic was related to tree growth. Moltar predicted that trees take a long time and are capable of being cut down, but Otto believed that reforestation was a technology using the 4 main elements to accelerate their growth. This wisdom was born from their great king Takto, which amazed everyone. Gia viewed it as very false, but Atto continued to tell them that the knowledge generated by their king covered many different fields, and asked if they realized how lucky they were for this blessing. Emily thought the apples she had gotten before were food created by the king, and Atto confirmed this but preferred the grapes created by the king. Emily was also impressed by the grapes and found seeds in them that she planted, eagerly waiting for them to grow. This left Atto and Takto astonished, and Atto asked her if she really planted the grape seeds, and they sprouted already? Then Takto wondered why he hadn't thought of this before. The best food created before was from the contemporary world. This meant he could use emergency production to create things that didn't exist in the game. He then performed emergency production and discovered that with this power, he could create gunpowder, basic metals, and even oil. But this required a substantial amount of magical energy, which was incredibly powerful. He felt happy, but Emily was afraid something bad would happen. Atto reassured her that everything was alright and that she had done well, and Mainagora had acquired its second national advantage. Then we moved to one of the kingdoms in the continent, where the princess was playing the piano and vowed to the cursed forest due to a warning that the world was coming from there. Then the cardinal came to her and asked her to hurry with the preparations due to the appearance of monsters in the northern province. The queen agreed to set out because she must not ignore this. We then returned to the elves, who began planting seeds in the forest. The princess and the cardinal moved along with a group of guards. One of the guards had heard that the princess possessed a special power, but he hadn't sensed it from her at all. However, the captain told him to wait and see. As they were walking, a group of monsters appeared, heading toward them to kill them. The cardinal asked the princess to act while the soldiers prepared for the monsters, but the princess cast her special spell, pointed her staff at the monsters, and burned them all. The cardinal was astonished by her power, likening it to a deadly weapon. But then something strange happened that surprised everyone. The princess possessed the power to completely repel evil and maintain a strong relationship with the elf kingdom. She buries her enemies in flames and bids them farewell with flowers, which is why she is one of the 7 great saints of the continent, known as Selina, the Lady of the Floral Burial. Then, Selina asked the cardinal about the matter they had discussed on the way. The cardinal didn't know what she was talking about. She reminded him that it was about the signs heralding the end of the world in the cursed lands, and the need to send holy knights to investigate. However, the cardinal strongly objected, reasoning that they should not pay attention to the cursed lands in the distant dark continent to the south, and that the leadership would not have allowed knights to be sent for this purpose. So, Selina decided to go herself. This decision made the cardinal extremely angry, because Selina did not realize her own status to be doing such a thing. He reminded her that she was no longer that simple village girl, but the cardinal told her he would send the soldiers under his direct command. When he left, he berated her without her hearing. We then moved to the forest. Atu told everyone that it was now time to build, which made the elves happy. Then she went with Takto to his council chamber. Takto was happy, and Atu asked him the reason for his happiness. He was happy about his throne being built by the elves, and that they did everything quickly, which was one of their strengths. Atu also told him that they had begun building their own civilization, which would be strong enough to dominate the land and pierce the sky. Then, Moltar, Gya, and Emily also came to them to attend a meeting, but before that, Emily asked Takto to accept a gift. Takto immediately put on the clothes and was very happy because he finally got rid of his sleepwear. Emily told him that they had all worked hard to make the outfit suit him. Atu also liked the outfit and thought it suited Takto very well. Atu told the elves that Takto was very happy, which made the elves happy too. Then Atu told them that the long-awaited time for internal affairs had finally come, but Takto was preoccupied with the beauty of his throne and paid them no attention at all. The elves were surprised by his behavior, but Atu tried to cover for him, telling them they would start the meeting and consult Takto whenever needed. Takto was relying on them. Then, Moltar asked about the buildings they wanted to start constructing. Gya had also made preparations, like leveling the ground and cutting branches, but Atu thought they should start by building a food production facility, believing that no one would fight a war on an empty stomach, even though they weren't planning on fighting any wars. But Moltar wondered if Takto could produce infinite quantities with his power. Atu saw this as overburdening Tacto with such a task, and thought they might face distribution problems as the land expanded. Moltar thought Atu was right and apologized to her for not planning well, but Atu had no problem with it, as he understood her point. Then, she presented them with something strange in a pot, which surprised them. Moltar asked what it was. Atu explained to them that it was a flesh tree, one of the food production facilities in their civilization. It produces a mysterious meat with the taste of human flesh, and provides an abundant harvest, but Tacto thought that sounded evil. Moltar understood this, but objected because some might be displeased with eating human flesh, but Atu asked them to plant it temporarily, just as a start. It would also need a hut to manage it, and a building to store the food, and Emily would be responsible for this. The tree asked Emily to take good care of it, which scared Emily. Then, Atu told them that the second item was research. Since they were a small nation, they desperately needed to acquire the latest technology. Moltar asked which technology should be prioritized. Atu thought it was magic technology, of course, which excited Tacto, and Atu told them this. Moltar, being a magic researcher like Tacto, also got excited and asked Atu what kind of magic they would be researching. Atu confirmed to them that it would be military magic, because regular magic could only target a few dozen people, but military magic allows you to wipe out armies of thousands. It also allows you to change the terrain in your favor, along with other strategic uses. This amazed them, and Moltar wondered if such magic even existed, but Atu asked him for some people talented in magic to work on this research. Tacto expected they would be able to develop it quickly, because it wasn't a very complex technology, which made Moltar feel excited about this magic. Then Atu moved on to military planning. Gia felt excited that it was his turn and that he should organize an army, but Tacto interrupted him and told him not to focus too much on that for now, which dampened Gia's enthusiasm. Atu thought that armies don't produce anything, but only consume resources and magical energy, but Gia saw that their current fighting force had no power to protect the king. Moltar thought that what was worse was that they had bounties on their heads for being leaders of the Dark Elves. Atu realized they were worried about being pursued. Tacto suggested that they produce a hero. Atu thought this was a brilliant idea. A hero might have a high production cost, but they require almost no maintenance, which makes them a perfect choice. Then Gia asked Atu what kind of hero. Atu told them that in Minogra, there are several heroes serving under Tacto's command. All of them are strong and possess special abilities. There are several conditions that must be met to summon them, but they should be able to summon one. At least, Tacto thought. The army's constant need for resources also attracts attention, and a hero could help them maintain their secrecy. Therefore, Tacto decided to produce a hero, and then they could rest, which led to Gia's gratitude towards Tacto. Tacto saw that managing internal affairs was very enjoyable, and Atu confirmed this for him as well. He then told them to collect magical energy from the citizens, and that this amount would be related to the citizens' happiness. The happier the people were, the more the nation would develop. Thus, Tacto would lead everyone to happiness. Then we moved to the continent of Idaragia, where a soldier named Lonius was hoping for his safe return from the Dark Continent. Fertile came to him and told him they had nothing to do, and that he had prayed enough. He then asked him about the necklace he was wearing, but Lonius immediately hid it. Ferdel thought he was wearing the ring as a good luck charm, and asked for the names of his wife and daughter. Lonius thought it was none of his business, but he resentfully told him that his wife's name was Marcia, and his daughter was Mina. Ferdel then told Lonius that they would be traveling together for several days, and that he would be annoyed if he heard him muttering his wife's or daughter's name in his sleep. Lonius said to himself that Ferdel was rude and impolite, but he had many skills and achievements. Ferdel wondered why they were sending him to the Dark Continent. Lonius told him they were going to investigate the vision of Saint Sualina. If they succeeded, they would be praised by the Southern Provinces Conference, but if they failed, he, as an assistant Holy Knight, would be held responsible. However, Ferdel saw that these forces were too weak to investigate Sualina's vision, and that they were the only two Holy Knights, with the rest of the soldiers being mercenaries. But Lonius thought it was very rare to conduct an investigation outside national borders, so there were no standards for the size of the forces to be deployed. Ferdel wondered what the higher-ups were thinking, but Lonius found it difficult to know what the higher-ups were thinking because they knew what was going on behind the scenes, and they must have had sufficient reasons to add Ferdel to Lonius's party right before his journey. Then they went out to the mercenaries, and one of them told him they had been waiting for him for a long time. Ferdel felt happy about the appointment of these mercenaries. Lonius thought to himself that Ferdel would increase their chances of survival in this battle. Then we moved to the forest, and Tacto was amazed by the construction that had taken place. He had seen the beginnings of his civilization in the game develop little by little many times, but now he was seeing it in reality, and it was a different matter for him. Emily then told them that this was their way of building houses on top of trees. She also told them that the meat tree was growing at a good pace, and they would soon finish the food warehouse. They had discovered a spring nearby to secure a permanent water source. This building was where King Tacto resided, and it was also the headquarters for the general administration to handle paperwork. She thought that the Minogra system deserved a more imposing headquarters headquarters, but this was what they could do for now, and it was this size at present. Takto said to himself that this was a wise decision and that she had accomplished tasks for which he had not issued orders, such as securing a water source, which he greatly appreciated. But more important to him were these dark elves, who were gaunt when he met them but were now full of life. He was the one who gave them that chance, but seeing them like this made him very happy. Emily asked Takto for his opinion, saying they had fulfilled his wishes out of a desire to repay him and also in return for the mercy he had shown them. Takto told them they were amazing and that he was happy he had welcomed them as citizens, which made Emily cry with happiness. Emily continued to guide Takto and Atu on their tour. Takto felt relieved that Emily had regained her composure, as a girl had never cried because of him before, and this had made him very confused. Emily then told them that the meat trees were almost ready for harvest and that everything was going well because of the high-quality equipment Takto had provided them. Takto assured her that he would provide them with more tools for the time being because he was worried that the quality would be low if they made them themselves. Atu saw that this would help them make rapid progress and that it was like cheating, but Takto felt pleasure in using abilities that seemed like cheating to impose control, and Atu felt happy about this as well. Then the tree said to Emily that it felt ripe enough to eat, which scared Emily. Atu guaranteed the production of the necessary food to support the population of Minogra. Then Emily asked them to accompany her to the water source. While on their way, Emily felt something strange in the forest. She was then surprised by the appearance of the spring they had found. Then Gia and Moltar came to them and welcomed Takto. They had come to build a water channel after Emily told them, but Emily thought the water was no longer usable. Moltar asked to take a look, but Atu assured them it was safe and drank from it, which amazed them. Atu then told them that this area was called the Cursed Domain, and this was proof that this land had become part of Minogra's territory. Takto then asked them to take a deep breath. When they did, Moltar felt his mind become clear. Gia felt power flowing through his body, and Emily felt very refreshed. Atu then revealed to them that they had become residents of Minogra, and they had now turned from neutral to evil and were granted the benefits of the Cursed Domain. Moltar wondered what Atu meant. If she meant that this wasn't a safe environment, but also one that provided a more comfortable environment for them to live in. Then Gia drank the water and saw that he could drink it normally. Takto told them that the Cursed Domain was very suitable for defense, and soon all their lands would transform into this form. Atu assured them that all of this was the fruit of Takto's power. Moltar expected this from a great king like him, but there was one problem, which was that it would clearly draw attention. Moltar suggested providing close surveillance on the surrounding area for now, but if the entire area became like this, it would make it easier for their enemies to discover them. Gia suggested they should form an army, but Atu wanted to reassure them because the king would produce a hero, so there was no need to worry. But Moltar did not understand what hero meant, even after Atu had explained it to them before. Atu thought it was better for them to see with their own eyes. Several days had passed since their arrival here, which was enough time for this. Atu then showed her power, which surprised the elves. She told them that she was also a hero, and that what they had seen was only a small part of what she could do. She explained to them that those called heroes possessed the power to wipe out entire armies. Takto explained to them that the power of heroes is extraordinary, does not attract attention, and they continue to gain strength over time even without doing anything, which amazed them. Gia wondered if Atu would become even stronger than this over time. Atu told them that since they planned to remain in isolation, her power was sufficient for their current needs. But Takto told Atu that she didn't have to destroy the forest to show off her power and told her they would talk about this matter later, but asked her to make sure to clean up the forest. This made Gia feel very excited, and he said he would help Takto as well. Moltar acknowledged Takto's power for the second time, and Atu's power as well. He thought he should build a palace befitting Takto, but Takto felt comfortable in his house, which was like the others' houses. Moltar saw that this was not befitting of him, and Gia rejected the idea of their king living in a house like the rest of the houses, and Emily would feel guilty about this. Moltar thought it would be rude to object to Takto's opinion, but he asked him to reconsider. Then Atu said to Takto that the cost of building the palace might be high, but it produces resources and seems it will increase the citizens' happiness. This led to Takto agreeing to its construction, and also the happiness of the elves since he agreed. Takto wanted to get the floating castle one day, so it would be good to start early. Atu saw that the national heritage that could be built when the city reached its maximum level was indeed everyone's dream. She thought that the floating castle was a city that flies in the sky, but this was beyond the elves' imagination and hard to picture. But Emily saw that Takto had fulfilled everything he had promised them, and this meant that the floating city was not befitting of him. Then the elves thanked Takto and renewed their pledge to King Takto, wishing for Minogra's prosperity to increase forever. This made Takto happy, and the process of establishing the nation was going wonderfully. He asked them to continue in this manner. Then we moved to the Holy Knights. They eliminated a group of monsters that blocked their path. One of the mercenaries thought there was no need for their intervention in the first place, but Ferdil expected that this was just the beginning. Lonius said to himself, hoping that their progress in the Dark Continent would continue at this pace. Verdil and Lonius continued on their way to the mission site. Verdil admired Lonius's intelligence when he decided to hire a group of mercenaries, but Lonius responded humbly, telling him that luck had favored him in this matter. He also informed him that most mercenaries are currently in the north. Verdil was disturbed by the northern disturbances. Lonius explained to him that barbarians had suddenly appeared in the northern province of the Holy Kingdom of Qualia and raided villages, causing severe damage. The Saint and the army were sent to contain the situation, but the unrest continues without any signs of calming down. Bargo, one of the mercenaries, mentioned that the north is facing many problems. Lonius asked Bargo not to talk about the matter as if it wasn't his concern, though Bargo actually didn't care about it anyway. Verdil asked Bargo if they had no desire to go there. He told them they could earn a lot of money, but Bargo knew it would be profitable for him and his team, yet still didn't want to go there after hearing about the presence of a witch, preferring to stay away. Verdil told them that no one cares about the north and that they were heading south to the cursed lands. He asked them to be fully prepared because they didn't know what they would face, but Bargo knew Lonius well and trusted him. They moved to the tavern, and Lonius asked Bargo about this witch. Bargo told them with disinterest that these were just rumors, saying people claim she was causing the northern disturbances. Lonius thought this was very silly, mentioning that the saint was also sent to the north, and it was impossible for all that had happened to be the work of just one person. Bargo also thought this was impossible and suggested they might be a group of heretics or something similar, but Verdil interrupted Bargo's speech and asked him to stop the gloomy talk. Verdil drank his cup and ordered more from the waitress. Bargo asked Verdil if he had drunk too much, but Verdil asked him to stop scrutinizing him. He quoted a saying, "After caring for people's suffering, in your home and before your family, take off your robe," meaning after good work, one should play and relax. Lonius clarified that this phrase was from the Book of Doctrine by Arlos, the third clause of the third article of the fourth paragraph, explaining that they learned from that article they should get temporary rest from their sacred duties among their families, and it shouldn't be interpreted as permission to drink. Verdil thought this was just a difference in interpretation and asked Lonius if he wanted to get into a logical argument. The waitress brought the drink to Verdil, who was waiting for it eagerly, making Bargo mock them, thinking he had two holy knights who spared no effort investigating something from the cursed lands of the Dark Continent, wondering what could be so important. Lonius asked if it wasn't related to witchcraft like in the north. Verdil told Bargo not to worry. It wasn't like that, and they had an idea what it might actually be. When Bargo asked what it was, Verdil revealed it was the place where the Dark Elves had fled, and their leaders were likely concerned they might cause problems. Bargo understood and saw that they couldn't just leave them alone, as they were skilled in assassinations and curses. Lonius believed if they gained power while hiding, they would eventually turn their swords against them. Verdil asked Lonius to calm down, as they were just going to investigate. Bargo was pleased when he learned of the plan and felt reassured. Lonius asked Verdil if he was sure this was the spirit they should have as holy soldiers, risking their lives to defeat evil. But Verdil got angry with Lonius and asked him not to let glory blind him, saying there would come a time when this would be necessary for them as holy knights. But this wasn't something to decide so easily because he had a family, and this applied to all of them. They all had good reason not to die. Then he joked with him again, telling him he should have stopped drinking, and that he was now just an arrogant old man drinking wine and preaching. Verdil stopped at the table and told all the soldiers they were going to the Dark Continent tomorrow, allowing them to drink as much as they wanted today. The scene shifts to Takuto with all his followers. Takuto was standing in front of a meat tree fruit. Emily asked Gia if something was going to happen now, but Gia had no knowledge of what would happen, only that Takuto had gathered them today and thought it concerned the kingdom. Mualtar asked them to stop talking because it was starting. Takuto cast a spell on the fruits, transforming them into long-legged insects, which amazed everyone. Mualtar asked Takuto if he could create new life. Atua proudly told them this was the power of the great Takuto, that he still possessed many powers, and that their loyalty and happiness would grant Takuto much greater power. She asked them to show their love for the king, leading the elves to cheer for Takuto. Takuto moved to his throne, happy that things had gone well. Atua encouraged him, saying she was glad they had used regular production safely. Takuto confirmed this was good but felt more comfortable when they backed down when he smiled to ignore their question. He wondered what this meant. Atua didn't think it would be easy to gather resources and add magical energy to them, but everything was done. She thought that thinking about things they didn't understand wouldn't help, but the important thing now was that, thanks to the recent ritual, they could confirm they could safely produce new units. Takuto saw that the next step was to conduct the hero summoning process. Atua thought they needed to gather a lot of magical energy now, and they now had a clear path. But Takuto saw that the clear path had two heroes beside him who would ensure the fighting power they needed. Atua asked Takuto when he planned to summon the first one. Takuto thought he would start with the insect queen, Isla, which made Atua happy because Isla was powerful. Takuto confirmed that the insect queen was one of Manegora's strongest heroes, had an insect form, and had the ability to enhance all insects, making long-legged insects first-class fighters. Additionally, Isla could produce larva units to serve as a workforce for them, enhancing performance in both war and internal affairs. That's why she was the hero they needed at the moment. Atua was very impressed with Takuto's suggestion because they desperately needed Isla, and summoning her early so she could reproduce and increase the workforce and gain more power was a classic strategy. When facing many unknown elements, it's wise to follow the most reliable strategies. Takuto confirmed this, adding that the rest had terrible personalities, so they had no choice but Isla. Atua remembered that one loved conquering the world and another loved plunging it into chaos, noting that all their heroes had problems. But Takuto wanted to focus on internal affairs now, and thought the idea of summoning them now wasn't right, though he couldn't do without their abilities. He wanted to meet them personally and therefore intended to summon them eventually, hoping they wouldn't cause problems because he wanted to live in peace. Then we move on to the army of Verdal and Lunius, and a huge monster appeared before them. Lunius saw that they were very insolent because of attacking them in daylight, but he expected this from the Dark Continent. Bargo then asked Lunius to offer them help and tell them what they needed to do. Lunius then told them to ready their bows, but Verdal decided that he would handle things himself since they didn't have time to waste as they were already running late. Verdal advanced toward the monster, drew his sword, and told his army not to do anything. Then Verdal used the sacred sword Techniquea Spellend. Lunius realized this was Qualia's hidden technique to gain strength. The monster tried to strike Verdal, but Verdal managed to split the monster's staff, which shocked the monster. Verdal then landed several blows on the monster and finished it off with a powerful final hit. Lunius saw that this was equivalent to the strength of a young dragon, and that even a hill giant would have no chance. The monster collapsed, and then Verdal returned to his army's ranks. Lunius admired Verdal's performance very much, and thought they wouldn't face any issues in their mission now that they had someone as powerful as him. Then we moved to Takto's land, where he was eating. Atu asked Takto why he wasn't eating better quality food, but Takto couldn't eat that. Atu advised Takto that he should eat healthier meals, but Takto was tired of this and ate the food, saying he had eaten a lot of it in the hospital. He told Atu he was worried about her. Atu asked why he was worried about her, and he said it was because she only ate salad, but this suited Atu very well. Takto was surprised and said to himself that her habits were very healthy even though she was an evil person. Then he asked her if the pace of things was believable, but Atu told him that the elves were making a great effort to build the palace. Takto remembered something important and asked Atu to summon Moltar and the rest when they finished eating. Atu agreed but asked Takto what he wanted to talk to them about. Takto wanted to explain to them how to deal with the long-legged insects because by helping him, he could see the area surrounding the forest. Atu asked Takto if he meant the nearby city was the area surrounding the forest. Takto confirmed that the city did not belong to Qualia and was not affiliated with those pro-good countries either. Atu explained that Qualia was far from the north and that it was a different, neutral country in the east. They needed to decide how to deal with it, and she thought they would be the first to discover their presence due to their proximity. Takto was happy it was a neutral country because if it were pro-good, they wouldn't be able to negotiate at all. But Atu expected that anyone else coming here would be a problem because they would only come with a specific purpose. Takto thought Atu was very worried, and told her there were no signs that anyone knew of their presence, so it was fine. But Atu expected that Takto's talk about this would trigger plot events as he knew, but Takto thought this was impossible and that nothing would happen. Then Takto felt something strange, and Atu asked in surprise what happened. Takto told her he felt someone was actually coming to them, explaining that an armed squad was approaching the forest. He asked Atu to avoid drawing attention right now, and to go and dismiss them in the most peaceful way possible, and if not, then there would be a battle. Atu agreed to this. Then we moved to Verdal's army. Lunius informed them they had reached the cursed lands and the cursed sea of trees. Verdal asked them to move inside, and after they moved, Verdal asked them to stop. A girl appeared approaching them, but Verdal asked her to stop, and asked about her appearance and what she was doing in this cursed land. Atu told them she was a dark elf who fled to the forest to survive, and she knew that Verdal was a holy knight from Qualia. She asked them what brought them to this land. Verdal refused to tell her the reason for their arrival, and asked her to answer their questions. He asked what she was doing in this land. The girl explained that she lived with her sisters who suffered a similar fate. Verdal didn't care if they chose to live in this cursed forest. It wasn't their concern. Their matter was related to the forest, and they would enter it. He asked if they objected to this. Atu advised them not to do this and showed them the red eye. Lunius got angry and told them they were holy knights and shouldn't be prevented, but Verdal asked him to be quiet because he was the one talking now. Lunius apologized to Verdal, but he was angry and said to himself that this didn't deserve all this rebuke and that it was just a small intervention. Verdal explained to Atu that they came to this land to complete a mission and couldn't return just because she didn't want them to enter. Atu explained that her sisters were afraid and had suffered a lot from a long and painful journey until they found a safe place to live in peace. peace. She asked them to show some mercy. Verdel saw that she was insistent on this and asked if there was something in the forest. The girl told him that only peace and quiet inhabited the forest. Then she asked why they were interested in this gloomy forest. Verdel got angry and told her they came to investigate an important matter to prevent a disaster on Earth, and they couldn't return without verifying the truth. This greatly surprised the soldiers. Lunius told Verdel he had revealed the mission's secret to her, but Verdel got angry at Lunius again and asked him to be quiet, saying he didn't care if it was a secret or not, and there were times when the truth had to be told. Lunius thought about it to himself and believed this was a breach of trust from Verdel, even if he was a holy knight. His authority had limits too. Lunius threatened Verdel that he would file a report about what happened when they returned home, but Verdel didn't care. Atu discovered the secret and learned that the holy knights were concerned about a potential disaster. Verdel confirmed that he insisted on entering the forest to verify the truth. The girl refused for the second time, which surprised Bargo and Lunius even after she knew they were holy. Then she made her eyes red again and told them there was nothing on the land that concerned them. She asked them to understand this and return from where they came, but Verdel still insisted on entering and said they needed only a moment, asking if this was possible. Atu begged them to refrain from this. Lunius was surprised and wondered if this was evil energy and if Atu was really from the Dark Elves. This confirmed to him that there was something in this forest that he needed to discover. Verdel asked the girl if there was any possibility that a disaster would befall them or their people. The girl denied this and said she was afraid something would happen to them and swore to him about this. Verdel ordered that they would leave, which surprised Lunius, who asked what he was doing. Verdel told Lunius they wanted to live in peace, so there was no problem with this. But Lunius could feel evil energy coming from Atu and wondered how he could trust the words of someone like her. Verdel trusted her because trust was part of their creed. Lunius asked what if she was deceiving them. Verdel asked him not to let fear taint his views because he had little faith. He told him there was no problem in this land, and this was the result of their investigation. Then he moved and asked the army to return home. Lunius got angry, insulted Verdel, and thought Verdel had abandoned their mission and stripped him of his authority. Verdel stopped and asked angrily if he was joking. Lunius thought Verdel was the one joking after revealing the secret mission to Atu and intending to return without investigating. He said he couldn't entrust this mission to someone who did this, and based on that, he would take command from now on. He gave orders that they would enter the cursed lands, investigate, and uncover the truth about this disaster. Bargo agreed with Lunius's orders, which angered Verdel, who asked Bargo to stop. But Bargo told him he was no longer under his command, and that Lunius was the one who appointed them. The girl asked them not to act recklessly, and that they could still resolve the matter through dialogue. Lunius asked Atu to be quiet and said if she continued to interfere, he would treat her without mercy. He asked the soldiers to arrest her. Verdel got angry and asked the soldiers not to touch an unarmed person at all. But the soldiers advanced toward Atu, and Atu thought the dialogue had failed. After that, Lunius woke up from unconsciousness, and his hands were full of blood. He was amazed at the complete destruction of the soldiers' weapons and surprised when he saw them suspended dead in the air. Verdel discovered that Atu was a cursed witch, which made Lunius very afraid. Then Atu told them that things were going well, but life isn't always something that goes well.